Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 Pillars of Responsible Decluttering. I'm Eric Morgell, and I'm the Adult Services Intern here at Troy Public Library. Tonight's Zoom presentation features Stephanie Safarian, a stay-at-home mom, a podcaster, and a creator of the Mama Minimalist website, and author of Sustainable Minimalism. Stephanie is going to teach us the 5 pillars of responsible decluttering, including how to measure true value and ways to prioritize quality over quantity. We will save the Q&A until the end of the program, but you may enter your questions in the Q&A or the chat box, and we'll review them at the end of the program. This program will be recorded, and it is generously funded by the Friends of the Troy Public Library. So if you appreciate programs like this, come support them at their bookshop on Saturdays and Sundays. It's a great, great time. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me, Troy Public Library. Thanks to the Friends of Troy Public Library for funding this. Thank you to everybody who's here. So excited to be here. I just want to give everybody an overview of what we're going to do today so that we're all on the same page. I have like a 3-part show for you today. I'm going to tell you really briefly about who I am and what I do and how I got here. I wasn't always doing what I do. And then part 2 is my presentation. I'll share my screen and I have a slide deck to present. And then part 3 will be a Q&A. And as it was just meant, if you have questions as I'm talking, just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So again, thank you for that amazing introduction. My name is Stephanie Safarian. I am very passionate about space in which sustainability, so eco-friendly living, making sure there's a planet for our children to live and our grand live on. As minimalism, I'm interested in that place where those two critical lifestyles intersect, and that's what sustainable minimalism is. I wasn't always doing this. First I should say I live in Boston. I'm not in Boston right now. This beautiful background. I'm so good at interior design. I'm actually on vacation with my family in Florida, but that's a whole nother story. So yes, I live with my husband, my 2 daughters, our Labrador Retriever, Boston. And before becoming an author and podcaster, I was a teacher. I taught English literature. And then I had a child, my first child. And I should say, I was an unconscious consumer prior to having her. I bought what I could afford. I walked all when I was bored. I didn't think about the consequences associated with stuff. I, did what most people do, which is buy stuff, fill my living space, and when I was done with the stuff, clutter it, maybe an extra minute or 2 to think. But otherwise, trash it. Who cares? That all changed the second I had my daughter, my first daughter. My husband and I and my daughter, we 150 apartment in Boston, and who has come with toys through minimalism. I forced out our home space-wise. Didn't have much free time as a new mom. I was spending the free time organizing this stuff, putting stuff, finding space for stuff. And I thought to myself, well, these stolen moments of free time here and there, organizing stuff, putting stuff away, let's be smart about this. Let's declutter the non-essentials. So I decided, I'm a minimalist. Let's do this. Let's minimize this stuff. And of course, in better stuff, right? Not my own. It's way easier to take a child who can't speak and can't advocate for herself, take the toys, take the the frilly dresses that I bought and that my family lovingly bought, with the best intentions. First of all, anybody who has a child knows that or an infant knows that they do not wear frilly dresses or sailor suits. They wear zip up onesies. And, so I took all the stuff that we weren't using and I put it in a pile on my floor in our apartment. And I had my aha moment. It was a 2-part aha moment. The first part was, look at all this stuff that my friends and my family and my wasted our hard-earned money. Good reason. That was insight number 1. I felt freer. I felt so much better. And then insight number 2 was, oh my goodness, well, where is all this stuff gonna go? Hello. So in that moment, I realized I wasn't a minimalist, because minimalism meant, or the minimalists that, are out there touting less is more lifestyle don't really tell you what to do with your stuff, do they? They just say you'll be freer and lighter without your stuff. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I felt like there was a critical part missing in the conversation, which was, well, what do you do with all the stuff? And so I'm going to share my slides deck now, and we're going to talk about that. Okay. All right. So I'm hoping you can see my computer. I'm thinking you can. We've done the choice before. All right. So let's back up. And before we talk about what we're supposed to do, I do a lot of these talks, and a lot of people come, they have family homes, they have their own stuff, but generation of their stuff and deceased loved one stuff, and perhaps even children's stuff who have moved out, but they haven't gotten all their stuff yet. What do we do with it all? We're going to get there. But let's talk about sustainable minimalism for a minute. You did not come to Marie Kondo's talk or Joshua Becker's talk or any other spark joy conversation. We're talking about sustainable minimalism today, which is decluttering as a means of treading lighter on the planet. So what is sustainable minimalism, and why should you bother? Okay. Reduce stress, anxiety, and family tension. Anybody who is living in a less than serene family home knows that clutter can indeed create fighting partner, or you're bickering with your children about cleaning up their stuff. So sustainable minimalism, when you live with less, it's a powerful way of reducing all those unnecessary that don't need to be there. Again, more free time, right? The average American spends 90 minutes a day on household upkeep. Now, I can think of a bazillion things I'd rather do with 90 minutes of extra free time. So, and I can attest, as a minimalist, less stuff does equal more free time. And then this is where, sustainable minimalism is much different than any old decluttering, any old minimalism, which is a smaller detrimental impact. 90% of climate scientists agree human behavior contributes to global warming and climate change. And it's really not even a question like, is this or is this happening anymore? It's happening. And I believe that the time to act was 30 years ago, but that moment has passed. So the time to act is now. And if you're wondering, well, what human behaviors are we talking about? I always refer to the big 4. What are we eating? How are we getting around? And how often are we getting around? How do we heat and cool our home? And of course, what do we buy? When do we buy it? How often do we buy it? Those are the big 4 when it comes to human behaviors contributing to global warming. So we're going to get into the 5 pillars of responsible decluttering now. But before we get there, I need to say loud and proud that decluttering is not the end. So just want a tidy house and you want to get rid of your children's stuff that's in the basement and you don't know what to do with the sentimental clutter from your deceased and beloved parents' piles of boxes in your attic, that I'm going to help you with that. However, I need to say at the outset that for sustainable minimalists, decluttering is just a stepping stone to a much bigger and a wider lifestyle, which is, again, leaving less of an impact on the planet. When I talk about, my moment looming over my daughter's stuff and saying to myself, well, where is all this stuff going to go? That was an aha moment for me, because I couldn't, again, do anything about my purchasing behaviors prior to that moment. However, it did inform me of how I can live better and how I can purchase smarter and purchase less going forward. And so that's what decluttering does in the sustainable minimalist sphere. It's not having a beautiful home like the one I have behind me that, again, is not mine. That's not the goal. It's a benefit, but it's not the end goal. It's important to remember that when we just throw all our stuff in the trash can, the stuff that we don't need anymore, away, it's totally normal to have stuff that you don't need anymore. Seasons of life change. And as our seasons of life change, the stuff that we need also changes with the change, right? Every flux is life, is living. And so there's nothing wrong with that. However, we do need to remember that when we stick stuff in the trash can and roll the trash can out to the end of our driveway, or however you dispose of trash, and the wonderful men and women who are taking away our stuff, that just, it's not out of sight, out of mind, right? Items have a before life meaning the resources that went into creating the thing, often fossil fuels and other non-renewable resources. So there's the before life, what was extracted and pulled from the earth to create the item. And then the afterlife. What is this item, this microwave, this chair, this watch, whatever the thing is, what is this thing going to do as it sits and decomposes in a landfill? Well, it's going to do two things, and neither is great. The first is, well, let me say, in a landfill, the conditions are not ripe for decomposition, and that's because there's no oxygen. So as things improperly break down, they are going to release methane, which is an extremely powerful and potent greenhouse gas, much more potent and powerful than carbon dioxide, which tends to get the lion's share of media coverage. And these items are also going to produce leachate. Leachate is this like toxic sludge that leaches from a landfill into surrounding waterways, soil, what have you. So I would love it if the only takeaway that you all take today is that items have a before life. So how was this thing made? What was extracted from the earth to create it? And then it also has an afterlife. How is this item going to impact our planet as it decomposes in its final resting place? So, all right, let's get into the 5 pillars. I'm going off on my soapbox. Here we go. Now, as I've done this talk a couple of times, I've realized that, I say 5 pillars, actually 6. Everybody always asks me the same questions, which is, where do you start? How do you start? Tell me all the things. I'm overwhelmed. Okay, so pillar 0 is to start simple, slow, and easy. You are not going to go to the basement filled with your deceased mother's items that you haven't been able to touch for generations or decades because it's so painful. You're not going to start there. You're not going to start in the attic where all of your child's baby items are that you've left up there. And now your child has left the house and you're feeling the empty nest and, it's all overwhelming. You're not starting there. You are going to start in the simplest place you can find. But before you start, you're going to make a plan. In my book, Sustainable Minimalism, which I believe your library has a 52-week decluttering plan. Okay, so one area to tackle a week. If your house is like most suburban homes, after 52 weeks, your house will be effectively paired of what's unnecessary. So I think week 1 is like your bedside nightstand, your nightstand. Okay. It can't be much easier. Week 2, I think, is your linen closet. And week 3 is your like medicine cabinet in all the bathrooms. So start simple, start in an unemotional place. Start in a place that's going to give you a quick win. You want quick wins at the outset because you want those quick wins to propel you forward so that down the road you can tackle the garage or the basement with the sentimental clutter or the attic with your child's baby stuff. Okay. So I just want to say that at the outset, we're not starting hard. We're starting really darn easy. All right, let's move on. Pillar number 1, essentially, is to choose quality over quantity. So think about the last time you were at a museum, right? Do museum curators keep every clay pot that was ever made throughout the history of time from any human that was ever created a pot? No. Museum curators keep the best of the best. And so I want you to think of your home as a museum, and I want you to think of yourself not as a collector, but instead as a curator. So what does this look like in real life where we don't have ancient pots lying around? Let's say you're in your kitchen and you can no longer close the drawer in your kitchen with all those oversized utensils. I'm thinking ladles and spatulas and I don't know, all those things that go in that drawer, right? You can't close it anymore because you have so many. All right. So you're trying to decide, well, what do I keep? What do I responsibly pass on? And we'll get to that in a minute. You're going to choose the quality item over the less quality item. So when it comes to, let's go with the spatula example. You have a plastic spatula and you have a silicone spatula. If you are choosing quality over quantity, you would keep the silicone spatula and pass on the plastic one because plastic boasts high toxicity and low heat resistance, whereas silicone is the opposite. Silicone boasts high heat resistance and low toxicity. So if you're in your kitchen and you're cooking with hot stuff, wouldn't you want one that's going to maintain its shape and efficacy in high heat and not emit potentially toxic chemicals into your food and into your home? Quality over quantity. Same thing with, I mean, we can take this example and we can expand it. If you have children and you realized, as I did with my daughter, as she turned into a toddler, she had about, at the height, I would say maybe 5 sets of blocks, like all different. Some were wood, some were plastic, some were Duplos, some were, I don't know. It's all the same thing, right? A building toy in another iteration. And so I'm looking at these toys and I'm thinking to myself, does she really need 5 different opportunities to build, or does she need just one quality set of building blocks? So use the quality over quantity pillar here. Quality would mean, again, not plastic. Maybe it's the wood blocks with the non-toxic dyes. If you're decluttering your blankets and throw pillows, perhaps it's the ones made, perhaps you keep the ones that are made of natural materials like cotton, wool, linen, hemp, and you discard the ones made of synthetics. Synthetics is a fancy word for plastic. If you have furniture, wood, like bigger pieces, perhaps you choose to keep the ones made of real wood instead of particle board. So I think I've beaten this point as far as I can go. But again, you're going to keep quality and you're not going to think so much about quantity. And that brings me to pillar number 2. And this is where people really have a hard time. So stay with me. We're going to measure true value. Possessions that are not regularly used have no real value. Okay, I know this is really hard. Stay with me. Let's say you have a working microwave in your basement. I don't know how you got it. You have a microwave. It's working, but you already have a microwave. You have a microwave in your kitchen. You don't need a second one. You don't want to throw this microwave out. Of course not, right? We would never throw out a halfway decent microwave. You don't want to give it away either because, you spent money on the microwave, or somebody, spent money on the microwave, and that would just be a waste of money. You think you might want to save it for some other person in your family, maybe your child who's going away to college, maybe they need a microwave, okay? So you're keeping this microwave in your basement. What I would love for you to think about, however, is that this microwave, which is sitting unused in your basement at the moment, has no real value. It doesn't matter what you paid. It doesn't matter whether somebody may or may not use it in the future. As of right now, it has no real value. And that's because all items have a fundamental purpose for existence. A lamp is meant to give light. A chair is meant to sit on. A mug is meant to hold a liquid. And so when these items are not being used for their purpose, and when they're just sitting in their potential, their value is lost. So it would behoove all of us then to restore these items' value by giving them or selling them or donating them to people who can use them for their intended purposes right now. With the microwave example, that's actually a really relevant example, because with the case of appliances and electronics, where product turnover is so high, so fast, and products are so cheap, what is the probability that, your son or daughter is going to actually want that microwave when it comes time for them to go to college or have their first apartment? I mean, they can go to Walmart and theoretically buy a new microwave. I mean, it's probably not going to be a great microwave, but they could buy a microwave at Walmart for $60, and it's new and it's shiny and it heats food. So the sunk cost fallacy, you've likely heard of it before. It happens in the decluttering sphere when we hold on to things precisely because we want to hopefully recoup some of the money that we spent on an item. However, that microwave sitting in your basement is not, it's not recouping any value by sitting there. So again, perhaps, sorry, I went too fast. One sec. Perhaps we give it away, donate it, do something with it to restore its value. All right, let's move on to pillar number 3, which is to ask the tough questions. So I said in pillar 0 to start small and start easy. If you start with your linen closets, if you start with your bathroom vanity, you're likely not going to come up with many snafus. You'll likely be able to get through it really well. However, the going is going to get tough. And when it does, I suggest that you ask yourself some really relevant questions. So these are the 3 that I always suggest. And we're going to go through them one by one, because especially when we're talking about, our basement full of sentimental items, let's say, the going can get really, really tough. So question number 1, would you keep it if you downsized, right? So I don't no longer live in Boston. I live in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. However, I still ask myself this question. I'm not going to live in a 4-bedroom house forever. Once my children leave the nest, I will likely downsize. So I ask myself the question now, will I keep this item if I was to downsize tomorrow? Or am I simply keeping this because I have the space to hold it? That's probably the most powerful question for me personally is, am I just holding on to this because I have the space and it doesn't bother me all that much? If I'm only holding on to it for that reason, that's likely not a great reason to hold on to something. Question number 2, would you replace this item if it broke? So I'll give you an example here. When my garlic press snapped, so we all know what a garlic press is, right? It's a handy dandy little kitchen thing that you put a garlic clove in and then it emits minced garlic, okay? When my garlic press broke, I said, that stinks. And then I minced with my knife. When my cell phone broke, I dropped everything on my calendar and schedule, and I ran to the store and I replaced that phone in under 12 hours. Now, that says a lot about my addiction to technology. I understand that. I'm here for it. But my point is, some things, when they break, the replacement is immediate, and that's because it's a need. If something breaks and you can wait a while, you can wait a couple days, couple weeks, couple months even, it's not an essential. So would you replace it if it broke? Means that's a fancy, special, tricky way, I would say, of asking yourself, is this a need or is it just nice to have? And then finally, question number 3, what's the worst that could happen if you let it go? Okay, so for me, I always get asked this question as well. Have you ever decluttered something that you needed or wanted later? And the honest answer to that question is yes. One thing in my whole 9 years now of doing what I do, one thing. And that was a very specific book. It was a running book. It's not a book that, most bookstores have, most libraries have. I could probably get it off Amazon, and that's where I'm going with this. But it's a specific book. I needed it. I just wanted to reference it really quick. Didn't have it. Okay, but you know what I did do? I requested it from my library and I had it in a week. So that's my point, which is in 2023, where goods are unbelievably abundant, if you let go of something and you need it later, you want it later, you're kicking yourself, you can have it in your hot little hand in about 2 days, thanks to Amazon. And I'm not supporting Amazon. I'm not saying you should declutter all your stuff and go then buy it later from Amazon. But remember that humans are evolutionarily, primed to attach more value to our possessions than is accurate, than is correct, than is necessary. And so we seem to think that our possessions are more valuable than they indeed are. Now, if you have one-of-a-kind items, handmade items, I'm not talking about those items. You should definitely, if you let those things go and you want them back later, that's a different story. Absolutely. But if you declutter a book or a spatula or a microwave or something else that, you can get back in 2 days or less, let that inform your decluttering decisions. And I should say here too, let's talk about the quarantine box for a minute. I came up with the term quarantine box well before COVID, and I know it needs a new name. Quarantine box doesn't have a nice ring to it anymore. But the quarantine box is something so simple. It is a box. Maybe it's a Amazon box. It's a repurposed box, right? And you put inside this box anything and everything that you're not sure. You're like, I haven't used it in a while. I haven't worn this shirt in a year, but I like it. Or, I haven't used this, I don't know, sewing kit in a long time, but what if I need it? Those type of things. So you're not sure, you're not ready to let it go, but you're not ready to just, it's not a heck yes, I need to keep this item. You put it in the quarantine box. And on it, on the item, the shirt, the sewing kit, whatever it is, you put the date you put it in. So February, what is today? I don't even know, 21st? February 21st, 2023. You stick it in the box, and then you stick the box with all the stuff out of sight. So that's the key. The quarantine box cannot be in your sight. It can't be in your living area. For me, my quarantine box lives in the depths of my basement, far, far away. So I'm not seeing these things. I'm not thinking of these items during the day. It's out of sight. So, okay, so I put my sweater in the box. I put a Post-it on the sweater with the date I put it in, and then I put it out of sight. Okay. If 6 months go by and that sweater has not crossed your mind, if 6 months go by and an opportunity to don that sweater or use that sewing kit or heat up food in that microwave or whatever the thing is has not occurred, that is your sign from the universe that it is okay to let it go. Because you put it in the box for a reason, right? You put it in the box because you haven't used or needed or loved on the item in a while. And then 6 months go by and now you're definitely sure that you haven't used it in 6 more months after however much time has passed before. So that's the quarantine box. It's for stuff that you're just not quite sure of, what you're supposed to do yet. Okay, now this is where, the what are we supposed to do with these items comes into play. And this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time, right? If we were just minimalists, if we were just, non-eco-friendly declutterers, we would throw our stuff in a trash bag and we would stick it on the curb and we would go on with our merry lives. And I think you're here because there's a better way. So pillar 4 is to remove but don't toss. Now that means we're going to remove items from our home that no longer fit in the season of life that we're living, but we're not throwing them in the trash can. We're not taking that easy way out, right? So let's say that you are planning to tackle your garage and all the items that are in your garage, and you believe that decluttering, sorting through, and organizing your garage is going to take you an entire weekend. So an entire Saturday and probably an entire Sunday. I always suggest that if you're planning to responsibly declutter the items that you are going to decide you no longer need or want, you also then on your calendar, so if you're saying February 18th and 19th, you're going to declutter the garage, I say you also say that the following weekend, February 25th and 26th, you are going to schlep these items to their next places of use. So it takes a lot of work to declutter anything. It takes emotional and mental energy. In some cases, if you have a lot of heavy stuff, it takes physical strength and energy. It's not easy. Sustainable minimalists understand that then taking a difficult task and putting even more work on your plate, so schlepping this stuff to places, calling places, emailing places, Googling, sending stuff in the mail, that takes even more work, but we're here for it because we understand, again, the environmental implications associated with just sending our stuff to the landfill. So again, my point here is if you're tackling the garage and you think it's going to take a weekend, you're going to set aside 2 weekends because the lacrosse sticks and the kayak and I don't know, what else do we have in garage? The snowshoes and whatever else that you decide you no longer have use for. It's not done until that kayak and snowshoes and lacrosse sticks are actually given to worthy recipients who are going to use the item. The job's not done. The job is not done if those snowshoes are just sitting in your trunk of your car for months and months. The job's not done. So allot yourself on your calendar twice the amount of time. So I think I drilled home point number 2, right? Responsible decluttering takes extra time, extra work, extra energy, but we're here for it. We're going to do it. And we're going to talk about how in a minute, but everybody also always asks me, well, what's step 1? Like, where do I give this stuff? And from a sustainability perspective, we want to try our darndest to keep our unwanted items within our community. So think local first, It does nobody any good if we're sending our daughter's trombone across the country or our old wardrobe that fit us 20 years ago across the globe, if there are people within your town, within your community, within a, let's say, I don't know, 20-mile radius that can use and love on your items. So look within your community first. For people who have trouble letting go of things for the sentimental and emotional attachment, I always suggest to them to give these items to someone you know, first and foremost, and ask them first. Don't just like give it to them. My grandmother was, God bless her. Every time I went to visit, she would like shove something in my purse, or just as I was walking out the door, just hand me something like whatever it was, a vase or a bowl or just something. And, at the time I was like, okay, thanks, Grandma. And I didn't understand, but now I understand she did that because she no longer had use for these items, but it was supremely important for her to give these items to someone that she knew. That was really important. She felt much better giving away that vase that she got when she got married 55 years ago to her granddaughter than just, putting it at Goodwill, let's say. And that makes sense. So if you have items and getting rid of them is sentimentally difficult, give to someone you know, but you do have to ask them first. Ask them. And if they say, no, thank you, I just have no need, no interest for this, we have to respect that wish, because the last thing we want to do is be a burden, right, on others. Okay, so you've asked everybody if they want those lacrosse sticks or vases or whatever the thing is, right? Next, I suggest we're still staying within our own community. Check out whether you have a Buy Nothing group. You can go to the website I've listed there, buynothingproject.org, type in your zip code, see if you have one. A lot of them operate on Facebook. So you may need Facebook to access the group. But if you don't know what Buy Nothing is, Buy Nothing Project is a nonprofit organization that's designed to connect members in a specific community. In the Washington Post, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, February 6th, they had an amazing feature on Buy Nothing and how essentially you say you have this thing, you don't want it anymore, you post it in the Buy Nothing group, and then people want it. People down the street want it. People are going to come to your house and pick it up. In the article, they had like a very strange monkey mask and like things that you would assume were trash, but no, there are people that want it. And even better, there are people in your community who want these items. So Buy Nothing Project is like my go-to. In my community, it's even easier. You have something you don't need, you stick it on the curb, you take a picture, you say, this is here, this is what it is, come get it. And then people can either message you for your address, or you can list your address if you're not concerned about privacy, and then it's gone. It couldn't be easier. There's no schlepping involved because people come and take it themselves. So I'm guessing you have a Buy Nothing group. Check it out via the URL there. If Buy Nothing isn't working for you, so there's another thing called Curb Alert. Maybe you have one of those. Nextdoor, Craigslist. These are all great places to put up stuff for free. I mean, you can also sell, of course, too, on Craigslist. We'll talk about that in a minute. But So, okay, so you tried people, you tried, Buy Nothing or Nextdoor or Craigslist. Neither of those are working. I would honestly, I'll be honest, I would be surprised if you put something up in a Buy Nothing group and it didn't get picked up. I'd be surprised, but let's just say for the sake of argument, those two don't work. Next, you're going to go to your local nonprofits. Okay. So I have a bunch of suggestions listed there. I'm not going to read it all out, but just know that we are not as sustainable minimalists in the business of just dumping stuff at doors. We're not doing that because we do not want our clutter to be somebody else's problem. So always call first, always email, and then respect their answer. If they say yes, absolutely, great, awesome, bring it, bring the item, whatever it is. If they say no, thank you, we have to respect that. Now I have to just escape this for 1 second, and I'm sorry. Whoop. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, now, and when we go back to paying or selling something, I always have people say, they want to sell items, they want to recoup worth. And I hear that. I mean, nobody wants to throw money out the window, especially when you look at something that you spent your hard-earned money on and you didn't get the use you expected out of it, right? I would just say, absolutely sell your stuff if you have the even extra time, effort, and energy to do so. Don't expect to get the money you paid because it's not going to happen, likely. And you have to be willing to play the long game because there's only one thing harder than responsible decluttering, and that is responsible selling. So it takes even more time. Okay. All right. So you've exhausted all your local options. Okay. So what do you do then? If no local option exists, that's when you're going to expand your geographical parameters. This is where you get on the internet. I wrote Google. I used to only have Google, but as a nod to Bing and ChatGPT, I had to put Bing in here. Google/Bing, if you've changed your search engine, is your new best friend. Okay, so it's amazing. I have this old, I don't know, trombone. What can I do with it? First of all, trombone's easy. Check out your local schools first. I'm sure the band department would want the trombone, but for the sake of argument, let's go with the trombone. What do I do with it? I guarantee you that some national organization will come through to the woodwork on Google/Bing and say, yes, they want your trombone. I would not suggest shipping a trombone across the country. That's going to be really darn expensive. I would absolutely go local with that trombone. But if your local middle school, high school, elementary school band programs do not want this trombone, you have nothing else to do with it, you've exhausted all your options. I know off the top of my head, there's a nonprofit called Mr. Holland's Opus, I believe, and they take band equipment, like instruments, and they then distribute them to low-income communities and schools. So trombone's kind of big. I personally wouldn't send it. But again, if you have no other options, again, we're going to expand our geographical parameters with that from outside our community. I would suggest, let's not the community of Troy and then national. There's a few steps in between. Maybe you expand your radius to 50 or 60 miles outside of your home, and then 100 miles, maybe then just the state. So we don't have to be sending these items to Boston, to California. But again, the point here is that if no local option exists, then we're going to expand our parameters. I also always get the question, well, what do I do with items that are in less than stellar condition? And the general rule of thumb here is that, if there's an item that you have that, you no longer want because it's ripped or stained or has holes in it, or there's some other problem, nobody else is going to want it either, right? So we're not going to be sticking our holy, like hold, saying like has holes in it, sweaters in the Goodwill donation, right? Because what is Goodwill going to do with those sweaters? Goodwill is not going to put them on the floor of their stores to sell. They're just going to textile recycle them. Or sheets. Let's say you have sheets that have, they're frayed, they're old, you've had them for 30 years. We're not going to give those to Goodwill. Maybe we would give them to an animal shelter. Maybe we would upcycle them ourselves. I love using sheets as trunk liners in my car. I have a dog, so she's always muddy. So I use sheets for that. For any sewers here, you're already likely taking sheets or clothes with holes in them and reserving the fabric. That's another thing my mom and grandma used to do. We have lost as humanity, right? We noticed, or we knew that fabric was valuable, and so we kept it, we saved it, and now we're just not doing that. But we can get back in the habit. That's the great thing about sustainable minimalism. We can relearn these old habits of upcycling, recycling, repurposing that we've lost along the way. And then finally, of course, remember that some items are indeed trash. So if you have a mug that's chipped or cracked or has a hole in it, like, it's important to remember that, yeah, it's sad that that item has reached the end of its life, but we also need to just know and remember that some items are indeed trash, and we need to trash it and then go on with all the other hundreds, thousands of afterlife decisions that we need to make with all the other items in our home. So if you have to trash something here or there, don't let it get you down. Don't let it stress you out. Make an informed decision and then move on to the next thing. All right, where are we? And then finally, my fifth pillar for you. If you're here just because you want to declutter your home and you do not care so much about the sustainability portion of tonight's talk, pillar 5 is for you. So you want the decluttered home. You want the Crate and Barrel-esque home. You want the home that's behind me, that's not mine, right? It looks really nice. Well, all too often I have listeners, readers write to me and they say, I did what you said and my home is still, it's not what I was expecting. It's not what I wanted. It's still cluttered. I'm still not feeling the serene vibes that I was hoping for. Okay. So if that's you, then you need to analyze what's left. There's 4 common issues that I often see time and time again. Number 1, people hold on to too much furniture. Okay, so when a home stager goes into a home, right? So like the person who comes in to make your home look perfect before you sell it, a stager, what do? They do 2 things. Number 1, they remove 80% of the furniture. And then number 2, for the pieces that they choose to keep, they replace those pieces with smaller items. It is unbelievable what too much or too big furniture can do to a space. If you find that you're always, hitting your knee on a side table, or you're zigzagging in and out of big bulky pieces of furniture, well, first of all, let me say furniture is the last thing we tend to think about when it comes to decluttering. We tend to think about the trinkets, the stuff that's piling on surfaces, but think about your furniture. Do you have too much? And do you have too big pieces for your space? So look at your furniture. Next up is the refrigerator. Do you have stuff all over it? Pictures from 1995, invitations that perhaps you could just jot down the important information on your calendar and then discard the invitation. Like, do you have stuff on the fridge? And if the answer is yes, and you love the stuff on your fridge, then keep it. But the fridge is a place that is just a haven for visual clutter. Visual clutter meaning stuff that attracts your attention and stresses you out, right? So maybe you just clear your fridge of all the stuff for 1 week and see how it feels. If it feels too bare, you put it all back. But if it feels amazing, leave it off for good. That's the refrigerator. Then same thing with excessive wall art. We tend to think that walls need art on them just because they're bare and they're big and they need art. But if you don't love the art, if the art is not adding to your home, if it's not making you smile every time you see it, if it's not eliciting some sort of emotion every time you look at this art, then perhaps it doesn't need to be there. So again, experiment. Maybe you take down some of it and just see how it feels. How does the bare wall feel? I don't have it here too, but curtains, another one. I had these big curtains in my dining room, and just the other day I took them down. It's amazing how different the room feels without these big, heavy curtains covering a decent portion of the window, right? So just change things up, see how it feels. If it doesn't feel great, you haven't lost anything. You can always put it back. Put the stuff in the quarantine box for a week or two. And then if you miss it, you put it back. Easy. And then finally, this is, I can't tell you how much collections come up. Collections. Do you have a collection of something, and is it out of control? And so I'm going to talk quickly. I think I have time. Yeah, I do. About my teapot collection. And it's a ridiculous story. Before I had children, my husband and I, we love to travel. And for some reason, I can't tell you why. I can't tell you. I decided that every time we went somewhere, I was going to purchase and bring home a teapot. I don't know why. I don't drink tea. I don't like tea. I don't brew it. I don't enjoy it. But for some reason, I was on the teapot bandwagon. And so what happened was I had this collection of teapots. I don't know, maybe 10 teapots, maybe 12 teapots. And, the sentiment was lovely to, memorialize our great times, our great vacations. But the problem was that when I displayed all these teapots together, they looked like a mismatched mess because they're all different colors, shapes, sizes, colors, right? It's like they just did not look good together, all of them. And I'll take that one step further and say that when you have a collection of something, your eye views the collection. It doesn't view the individual teapot. So I'm looking at my collection of teapots, and I'm not zoning in or honing in on the teapot from upstate New York, let's say, or the teapot from Japan. I'm just seeing the whole, dare I say, cluttery collection. And so if you have a collection that you love, but you feel like you're not looking at the individual pieces that make up the collection, why not instead just put out, 2 or 3 at a time and rotate? That is a great way to, again, memorialize the individual pieces without creating a cluttered mess in which you don't truly see any of the items in the collection. Okay. So you decluttered your house in a perfect world. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Everything's lovely. Now what? Again, I said at the beginning that like a decluttered home is an aha moment. It's a stepping stone. It's not the end all be all. So what next, right? I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go through this quickly. But you are going to then apply the tenets of less to all other areas of your life, right? Perhaps you use less plastic. Perhaps you send fewer bags to the landfill each week. Perhaps you minimize, the toxic products or potentially toxic products in your home that might be hurting your health. So it's about a smaller tread through life. We started the smaller tread by minimizing the wants, the frills, the extra in our homes. And now we're going to take that and we're going to apply it to other areas of our life, because that's step 1 in the eco-friendly journey. Okay. I'm going to go through this really quick because I think it's important. We 8. um, but okay, so next step, so you decluttered your home, you don't want to refill it with junk. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to stop buying stuff you don't need. And when you do need to buy stuff, you're not going to buy junk. You're not going to buy junk. So can you acquire what you need without buying? Can you borrow? Can you barter? Barter is such a great age-old skill, right? Can you thrift? Can you buy used? Okay, acquire without buying. We don't always have to buy new, and Amazon is so easy, so quick, so convenient, but it's not what's best for the planet. When you do buy, trust reputable certifications. So maybe you see like a little logo on a package and it looks cool, but you don't know what it means. Maybe it says, I don't know, GOTS certified, or maybe it says Certified B Corporation, or maybe it says, I don't know, certified 100% certified organic, the third party certification. Learn what those mean. They mean something important. Those labels mean that a corporation has gone the extra mile, taken the extra step to have a third party come and certify that their product or their corporation, their business practices are a certain way, are going above and beyond. GOTS certified means Global Organic Textile Certified, standard certified. So 80%, I believe, of the items in that product, a blanket or a pillow, let's say, are made with organic materials, which means that the materials that went into making that pillow or the blanket weren't sprayed with pesticides that then, polluted our waterways and our soil. Okay, so those certifications mean something. Learn about them. Build-in buffer zones. This is super easy to explain, right? Like, put some barriers up to purchasing so that purchasing is your last resort. With e-commerce and 2-day shipping and saved credit cards and targeted ads, it's never been easier to buy, right? We have been primed to believe that the solution to all our problems lies in a quick and easy purchase, right? So all the barriers or buffers to purchasing have been broken down from e-commerce. How can we build them back up? Can we sleep on it, right? Can we unsave our credit card information? Can we unsubscribe from Amazon Prime? Because we're paying, what is it, $120 a month now just to buy more stuff on Amazon. So build in buffer zones. I love to sleep on something. I think I need something at 8 p.m. one night. I think I need it. Oh, I need it so bad. I guarantee you at 8 o'clock a.m., I don't need it nearly as much or as bad or as hard as I did just 12 hours prior. So build in the buffer zones that have been broken down by e-commerce. Next up, support local. When you do need something, go down the street first. Keep your money within your local community as opposed to giving it to some mega corporation who really doesn't need your money. When you keep your money in your community, you are strengthening your local community. You are supporting resiliency. So support local whenever you can. And then really quick, assess hidden costs. Hidden costs of items include, how much time is it going to take you to maintain that item? The environmental impact. What happened to this thing once you're done with it? Or what happened to create the thing? And then shift your spending mindset. I don't really think we have too much time to talk about this. I always overtalk, but we've been primed, right, in this society to buy the cheapest, right? To snag a deal, to buy the cheapest and to snag a deal. And we feel really darn smart when we do. And I understand absolutely that there are financial concerns. And if we do need to snag a deal to continue living, like, I'm not speaking to you, like, you keep doing your best and keep doing it proudly. But for the rest of us, like, if a pair of pants, so I was just at a store the other day and they were selling pants for kids, for little girls. If a pair of pants for a little girl costs $6, we should be in the habit of asking ourselves, is that too cheap? Yes, $6 for a pair of pants is too cheap. Corners have been cut. People have likely not been paid living wages. The planet has likely borne the brunt of unenvironmental manufacturing practices. So let's keep that all in mind if we, again, have the privilege to do so. All right, so I over talked as much and I want to answer a lot of questions. So if you listen to podcasts, or if you want to listen to podcasts, my podcast is Sustainable Minimalist. It's the square box. That's the icon. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, if you need to know how to by the way, sometimes I get the question, well, what's a podcast and how do I listen to one? A podcast is free content. It's free. You just click play. It's in your ear. If you need to know how to listen to a podcast, we can talk about that. Just write that in the chat and we'll get to that. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and my book, which your library does have, is called Sustainable Minimalism. And there's my email if you would love to ask me a question privately. I promise to respond. So I'll leave this up for one more minute and then we'll get to questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
like Stephanie said, we have multiple copies of her book actually, and I will link the record like to our online catalog, so you can request it if you would like. Let's see. Okay, so the link to her book is in the chat. Okay, and then also that your talk made me think about, we have like a thing called experience kits that we loan out at the library. So it's kind of our answer to like a library of things. So I might actually link that too. So if you want to borrow like a pasta maker because you don't want to buy a pasta maker, you can do that through us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, I see Sandra has a couple questions here. I'll start with the Beanie Baby question first. Sandra wants to know, do I have any suggestions for getting rid of these? I'll just say I was on the Beanie Baby wagon circa 1995, right? And yep, they did not turn out to be as valuable or lucrative as everybody said they were. I think that was likely just a marketing ploy to get people to really buy into them and make them like hype worthy. I would suggest, do you have any young kids in your life? Can you maybe wrap one of those up on a package and give it to another child? Can you donate them to a women's shelter, a homeless shelter near you? I know police stations often take stuffed animals for crisis situations to help young children. Like I would use the same suggestions I offered in my presentation, which is look local, ask around, and see what you come up with. With regard to particle board furniture, Sandra says, local charity shops don't want it. How to get rid of it if no one on Buy Nothing Project wants it? Yeah, particle board furniture, right? Like we have a lot of problems with particle board furniture. It really looks nice for a little while. I'm thinking IKEA. It looks nice, but then you try to put something in the drawers and the drawers buckle. Yeah, I would say, again, look around local. If nobody wants it, don't forget that some things are indeed trash. And if an item is no longer serving its utility because it's broken or cheap, etc., then that would be an example of it being trash. And I would say with the particle board furniture in particular, let's use that to inform our future purchasing decisions as it resorts to furniture. Like the stuff that looks really trendy and is inexpensive often doesn't last that long and nobody wants it. So there's a really good life lesson there. All right, anything else here?
I don't see any in the chat, more just like comments. Oh, someone said that senior living facilities might love Beanie Babies, which, yeah.
You guys are shy. Come on. Oh, excessive books. How about the Friends of Troy Library?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it always depends on what kind of books, right? Like, I'm sure the Friends of Troy Library want books that they can resell. Maybe old textbooks that are super specialized, that would be harder to give away. I don't know if you're, let's say you're an engineer, maybe you have a local school nearby with an engineering program. I would check the high school. But again, too, with these old books, is the information no longer relevant? Again, that comes back to the, is this a trash problem? So I guess Pratt's, I would ask, what kind of books? That would be my first question to you. Anybody? Anything? Oh, fiction. Did you try Pratt's, the Friends of Troy Library?
Yeah, the friends will take, I mean, especially fiction, they take other things too, but fiction's like the big seller. So as long as it's in good condition, like Stephanie said, like we don't want moldy, or the friends don't want moldy books, but anything that's usable and readable, and still enjoyable, yeah, like they'll definitely take. And again, all of that money that the friends make at their bookshop goes back into us to do programming to host people like Stephanie. So it really is like a cool cycle.
Yeah, I always suggest, donating to your library first, because again, you're supporting a resource that you use. However, if that's for whatever reason not an option, again, go back to the senior center, or the local shelters, or the senior citizens home, or the nursing homes. I mean, books in good condition have plenty of life left in them. Even if you just pass them on to people in your family and say, hey, I read this book and I really like it. Like, why don't you read it, like it, and then pass it on when you're done? So just some thoughts there.
It looks like there's some questions in the Q&A.
Okay. Glenn says, would you rather give your magazines to an old recluse who will throw it away, or recycle the magazines? Oh, good question, Glenn. I would say that a magazine is meant to be read, and the information within is meant to be like, that's its utility. So I would give the magazine to an old recluse, and then I'd ask for it back, and then I'd recycle it. That's my answer to that. How would I get rid of a pool table? Oh, I love these oversized questions, right? I was using, I think, a trombone, a pool table. It's the same. So it's more trouble for you in terms of bringing it somewhere, because again, it's oversized, Marie, but the principles are the same, which is you call around, you ask who would potentially want it, and then you get it there. I would suggest buy nothing for a pool table first and foremost. Or I saw somebody say you guys have a free cycle group. I would join that group and I would put it there. If your pool table is in good condition, you don't have to schlep it anywhere. Somebody will come to your home and pick it up. Again, if it's in good condition. If it's moldy or warped or whatever happens to pool tables, then that might be trash, and that might then become a conversation about, well, how do I dispose of this pool table? But I would say, if I were you, Marie, I would put that thing up on Buy Nothing, and I would probably have it gone by the weekend. What about kids' memories art? Okay, Lisa, this is one I've gone through recently. I do this. So if anybody with young children, you know that the artwork is like, it just, I don't know. I don't even know the word. There's so much art and so many feelings behind the art. So what I do is I take pictures of the best. Well, no, let me back up. I should say I have a door in my home, and that's like the art wall. And so the best of the best goes on the art wall. And when the time is up to change out the art wall, I take pictures of the art. The best of the best I will put in their baby books, but the rest of it, I'll take pictures of it. And then at the end of the year, I create, like a Shutterfly book of memories of all our photos of the year. I also create a couple pages of their artwork. So I memorialize it by condensing it, if that answers your question. And if it doesn't, please ask another question. So keep the best of the best, right? Because if you keep everything, then the best of the best loses its greatness, right? Because if you have a lot of something, you're not allowing the best to shine. So keep only the best, and then the rest of it, take a picture, put it in an album. Piano, Barbara, I would say the same thing. Same thing as the pool table. Buy nothing, free cycle it. Somebody will come and get it. If they want it, they will come and get it. Are you concerned about safety with strangers coming to your door with buy nothing project, Craigslist, etc.? So I would not have somebody come to my home if I was home alone. Absolutely not. However, I guess I don't know what type of community you all live in, but I would say for myself personally, I'm not concerned. Would need to be dismantled. So Marie says the pool table would need to be dismantled. Okay, I would say that you would likely need to do that unless somebody's coming in a big truck. Walter, you asked if I could share my presentation. If you want to email me, I will send you the slides. Or if anybody wants to email me, I'll send the slides and maybe the library can make them public. I'm happy to do that. I think this was also recorded, right?
Yeah, so it has been recorded. It takes like a couple of weeks to get the video onto the City of Troy's YouTube site. But there will be a link from the library's website to the City of Troy's YouTube site where you can watch this on demand.
Okay. And Walter, if you need the presentation, like the slides sooner, I'll type my email into the chat again, and you can email me and I'll send it to you.
Oh,
Okay.
I think that might have gone to just hosts and panelists. Instead of everyone. Yeah, sorry. That silly thing about Zoom.
Well, you asked me earlier if I knew how to operate Zoom, and clearly the answer is no.
No, it happens with everyone, regardless of how experienced you are. It's like there's always that button that you like forget to click.
Vivian, you asked, how would you talk to someone who needs to declutter? Well, my question for you would be, is this a hoarding situation? And if it's a hoarding situation, it's also a mental health situation. And that would require the expertise of someone much more knowledgeable than I do. There are plenty of books and resources out there on how to deal with hoarding disorder. And if that's the case, Vivian, then let me know and email me and I'll shoot you some resources. However, it's just somebody with a decluttered, if it's just somebody you're speaking with a house, and I would say, let them do their thing. Again, emails in to more personally help any of you, just send me an email. I am on vacation via my family. Get back to you, and again, anything I can do for any of you, let me know.
Right. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of thank yous in the chat and the Q&A. Yeah, so again, thank you, Stephanie, for coming with us tonight and sharing all that you know about sustainable decluttering. It was really, really informative. We were really grateful and happy to have you. And we'd love to have you back. Like, this is fantastic. So yeah, and thank you for everyone who came out tonight. It is a little late and you guys watched this video, which is really nice of y'all. So I think with that, we can end it.
All right. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.